start?
We'll be starting in a minute. It's not on your personal page.
Hopefully, that's on me.
All right, Mom.
Hi, good morning. Happy Friday. Happy Erev Shabbos. Who's ready to make chicken soup with me? You know, I feel like we're home, right? And I'm finding that I'm able to do a little bit more cooking while I'm home. And what's nice is that I have to just use, or I get to just use the ingredients that I have in my home. I've become much more judicious with using the things that I have, as opposed to just immediately ordering on Instacart or running to Trader Joe's. So I've become much more creative with the things that I make for dinner, breakfast, and lunch as well. Okay, so let's start like this. First of all, does everyone hear the sizzling? Oh, it's music to my ears. It's the sizzling of the chicken. And we'll talk about that in a second, why I hear sizzling when I'm making chicken soup. Let's start with ingredients first. I just want to make sure everyone has everything that they need. Number one is kosher chicken. I like to use the chicken legs. I get them usually at Trader Joe's. Whenever I work with chicken, I try to use gloves or stand right next to a sink, so I wash my hands as soon as I finish touching the chicken so that I don't bring the bacteria from the chicken all over my kitchen. So I have gloves, thanks to coronavirus, silver lining. I have gloves everywhere. Okay, let me preface that we're gonna find, again, this is in the morning, my thing is to always find silver linings all day. And we're gonna find lots of silver linings. So I won't hear you with your silver linings, but you're welcome to share them, your silver linings, as you think of them. And it will inspire me for sure. Okay, chicken. I usually use about 4 pieces of chicken when I make. So I don't know if everyone has such a big pot, but even if it's like, I think this is like a 12 quart or an 8 quart, even if you have a 6 quart, I would use 4 pieces of chicken because the chicken really adds a lot of the flavor and the fat. Okay, chicken, and I leave the skin on, and I generally make the chicken soup Thursday night so that after, chicken soup tastes amazing when you allow the flavors to marry, when you just let it marinate and sit for a little bit. So, and then once it gets cool, I stick it in the fridge, and sometime Friday, I take my soup out and then I skim all the fat off the top, so it gets the flavor but not the fat. So I always like to make chicken soup with the skin. Okay, let's go over here. Can they see me? Okay, here are my ingredients. Look how beautiful. This is silver lining, no matter what is happening right now. Look how many beautiful vegetables you can get. This is God's creation, and look at the different colors. It's so beautiful. You know you're eating well when your plate has lots of different colors. Okay, and I don't mean different colored jelly beans. I mean different colored vegetables. Okay, number one, the aromatics. So the first thing we always use is lots of onions and lots of garlic. I sometimes buy the pre-peeled garlics. They have a kosher symbol on them, and most of them are organic, and so that makes it just easier. Just rip the bag open and put in about 11 or 12 cloves. Okay, so that's my aromatics, but I have more aromatics. We have leeks and we have carrots, and I'll show you how we peel it and prepare it. We have leeks. These are leeks, and they're a type of onion, leeks. And then we have carrots and celery, and we have parsnip. That adds a sweetness to the soup. If you don't have it, I'll tell you the most important ingredients for soup is onions, garlic, celery, and carrots. Those are like the basic, I would say the mirepoix, but mirepoix is onions, celery, and carrots. So you should definitely add garlic for sure. And then anything else you add will just add layers of flavor. Okay, please note that you can type in the questions, and if I don't get them right now, I'll definitely get them towards the end. But please type as you go along, and we'll try to answer as we see them. Okay, so here are some other additions I add just to add more flavor. Remember, when you're cooking, the idea is to keep layering flavor upon flavor, and then when you take a spoonful of it, you get to taste the various layers, and it's just incredible. Okay, I like to add a butternut squash for sweetness. I like to add, okay, here's a really cool thing. This is a celery root. This gives it a really good, for some reason, it gives it like this umami, this like thickness of flavor. So I try to always get one, and you can get them organic. So I like to do that. I try to get all my vegetables organic nowadays. I'm like being easier on myself because I'd rather my kids eat vegetables even if they're not organic. But I still am trying to get organic. Okay, this is a rutabaga. It's like a turnip. It looks like this once it's peeled. Also, it's so delicious once it's cooked. You know what I do? I take it out and I cube it, and I'll make maybe like a little vegetable of the soup vegetables, and people can spoon back the vegetables into their soup. It's really delicious. I eat it plain. It's like once it's cooked in the soup. This also is nice to use. You don't have to use all of it. I'm just giving you ideas of different vegetables that really add flavor. Sweet potato, or it's actually a yam. And then, we talked about celery. I think we got everything. Okay, woohoo. Now let's start breaking everything down. So the first thing we do is okay. In a few seconds, you're gonna hear the sizzle of my chicken. So let me tell you what I do. Where's my chicken scissor? Could you see if my chicken scissor is over there? There should be a chicken scissor, maybe the next one. I want to show you what I do. When I take the chicken out of the package, there should be a black scissor. You get to see a behind the scenes kind of look. Maybe it's in the sink because I use it. Okay, so here's my chicken scissor. It's a poultry scissor, and I use it all the time, every time I'm preparing poultry or meat. So when you take the chicken out of the package, you'll notice that sometimes I kind of clean some of them, but sometimes you'll see like little extra strings of fat. Feel free to kind of clean it up a little bit. So I just sort of like clean it a little bit. Sometimes you'll find that some chicken needs more cleaning than others. There's a whole discussion about whether you rinse chicken or not. Realize that the more you touch the chicken and the more you rinse it in your sink, you're spreading the bacteria of your chicken. So I don't rinse it, because I don't want the spread of the bacteria all over my sink and all over my hands. So, and today, of any day, this time we understand the idea of spreading bacteria and spreading viruses. Okay, and I'm not mentioning that virus. Our home is a positive zone, and we only talk about positive things. We talk about reality. I mean, we're careful, and we wash our hands constantly, and we use the sanitizer constantly. We make smart choices, but we don't bring any of the negativity and the fear-mongering into our home. Our home is a sanctuary, and it's a positive zone. Okay. You hear the delicious smell? Oh, I wish cameras had a like scratch and sniff. My whole kitchen smells just delicious, and you kind of see the smoke coming out. That's what the chicken should look like. So what I do is I turn on my pot. I turn on my oven, and then my stove top. I'm sorry, and then I stick about 4 pieces of chicken in the pot. Once the pot gets hot, and then I allow my chicken. This is the secret of why my chicken soup is so good. It's because I kind of like roast the chicken in the pot to give it that extra flavor. And if you'll see, can you show the inside of my pot? If you'll see, there's like little drippings already, and my chicken has a beautiful color. So everybody take your chicken and stick it into your pot, and just allow the pot to kind of sizzle away, and kind of turn it over as it gets dark. You don't want it too dark, but you want it to kind of release some of its fat, and that will go into the soup. Remember that fat rises, so when it lifts to the top of the pot, you'll skim it off. And I actually will show you what a skimmer is. Okay, have a cutting board, have a knife, have a peeler. And by the way, just as a side note, here is my skimmer. I use this to skim the fat off the soup, and it works really nicely. Okay, so who's ready to make chicken soup? Woo! Hot, heat your pot up on your stovetop and add your chicken and let it make this beautiful, delicious sound. While this is happening, I'm going to move the chicken away, and I'm actually going to take off my gloves. And we're going to start breaking down the vegetables. Okay, my onion. Oh, another really smart idea that I saw on Rachel Ray many, many years ago is a garbage bowl. I always use a very large cutting board. But if you don't have a large cutting board that you can kind of move the peelings to the side, use a garbage bowl. This way you have everything contained, all your garbage contained in a bowl, and then you just dump it out as it fills up. And it just sort of, the whole motto, clean while you work, works really nicely that way. So I have my garbage bowl here, and we're gonna start. So we're gonna break down our vegetables. Take your onion, and I like to use 2 onions. This is what I do. I cut the top and the bottom off, and then I cut it in half. And this way, it gives me an easier way to peel the vegetables. I want to give a shout out to any growing gardeners who are watching. I miss you. I'm going to get all emotional. I miss you guys terribly, terribly. So, and I can't wait to see you really, really soon.
This class is
Okay. Let's do the next onion. See how easy it is when you have a garbage bowl? It kind of clears your working space. Okay. All right, so now, I sort of just like usually, okay, there you go. Okay, 2 onions, and I'm prepping them and I'm keeping them on the side. Let me show you what I do with the garlic. So with the garlic, what I generally do is I use the pre-peeled. But if I don't have the pre-peeled, I take a head of garlic and I sort of just cut the top and sort of like cut the bottom, and then I just don't even bother peeling it. And I sort of save, I like to salvage all the pieces that still have the garlic in it. There you go. So then I didn't have to peel each one. The idea is to be inspired to cook, but also to make it as easy as possible. So instead of thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to skip the garlic because I don't want to have to peel all the garlic pieces, I just cut it like this, and that's it. That was my garlic. Okay, so this is the foundation. This lays the foundation after the chicken. I'm going to lower this because I don't want it to burn. And sort of, by the way, use your nose as the gauge to know when things are ready. In general, you know that. Whenever you're cooking or baking, your nose is your first indicator. Your eyes and nose are the first indicators of when it's ready. Okay, here's how you break down a leek. You take the leek and you find this part where it goes from white to really dark. So it's kind of like right here. And you just cut it off, and then this you throw out. And then you cut the top off. And then I like to peel the first layer. And then what you do is you slice it in half. And you see how it's very dirty over here? There are like dirty spots. So I take it under my faucet and I rinse the layers that are dirty. And at the same time, I want to check to make sure there are no bugs. Bugs, thank God, are not kosher. So we are a bug-free zone here. And bugs like to live in vegetables. So one of the things we do is we just check our vegetables. And whoever was watching our challah baking last week, we talked about how we bring God, we bring Hashem into everything we do. So here I'm making chicken soup. using kosher chicken, so Hashem is already involved in my chicken soup. Making it for Shabbos, so Hashem is already involved with my chicken soup. And then to add another layer of involvement with Hashem, with God, is I'm checking the vegetables to make sure there are no bugs. Let me show you what it looks like once it's all clean. Here are my leeks. So the leeks obviously come, just like people, come in different sizes. Leeks come in different sizes. So this one is obviously longer than the other one. I like to get mine at Trader Joe's where it's already pretty much cleaned and they already have removed the green on the bottom. So, but I still take off the layer, I still cut it in half, and I still go through to make sure there are no bugs, and I still go through to make sure that they're all clean. So I've washed these already. This is very like a la Food Network where I kind of talk about it and then I have it prepped already, most of the stuff. Okay, let me show you how to okay, then you take carrots. So everybody grab a peeler. And I like to rinse my carrots first, and then I'll grab my garbage bowl, and everybody will just peel. This is how I like to peel it. I like to peel it where the narrow tip is up and the thicker tip is down. It gives me a little bit more control of holding my carrot. There you go, for peeling carrots. I would use about 4 carrots. Carrots add a lot of sweetness, and so I would use about 4 or 5 carrots. And what you can do after, when the soup is ready, is you can chunk the carrots up and put them in the soup bowl along with your matzo ball and along with everything else. That reminds me, Isaac, can you go get a box of matzo ball mix? I want to show everyone how to make it. Okay, carrots. So here's about about 5 carrots. You can do as many carrots as you want. I would do at least 4 carrots. Yeah, 5 or 6, whatever you want. Okay, really, you can tailor the soup according to your family and what they like. If you already cut up your onions, I'm feeling like I want to kind of marry my onions with the chicken. So I'm going to stick my onions into the pot so it can kind of start sauteing a little bit with the fat of the chicken. I'm also going to add my garlic. So what I'm doing is I'm adding layers of flavor into my chicken soup. So you hear the beautiful sound of sizzling? It's just amazing. Okay, next. The next thing we're going to do is let's start breaking down our celery. Celery, if you can, buy organic. It's one of those vegetables that really should be organic. Also remember that you want to check to make sure there are no bugs. So this is how I break down a celery. I like to buy them kind of pre-cleaned a little, where they take off the tops and they kind of take off the outer leaves, the outer stalks. So I just cut the bottom. Once you cut the bottom, it sort of releases the rest of the celery stalks. And then what I do is I check. You see there's like a little dot over here. I run it under cold water, and I check to make sure, my matzo ball mix, and I checked it. You want to make one so that it will be ready, and then I'll show them how to make one. So here's my celery. I already prepped the celery and washed it, so let me show you what it looks like. What I tend to do is I tend to cut the tips off because they sometimes get a little brown, and I don't really like the way that looks. So I just sort of cut the tips off. And I use about, again, celery also, it's a surprising flavor, but it adds flavor to the soup. So I just grab a handful, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 here because they look smaller. You could use 4, you could use 3. There's no real recipe, and I really like to follow recipes, but sort of like make yourself comfortable depending on how big your pot is. Okay, so far we have onions, garlic, and chicken kind of dancing and singing in my pot. And I'm using this portable one that doesn't have the same kind of energy as my regular stove top, and now it doesn't sound like it's working at all. Maybe I made it, okay. All right, next, let's break down a butternut squash. So I washed this already, especially now, any vegetables or fruit that come in, just wash it really well before you use it or peel it. Okay, here's how I break it down. This is such a beautiful vegetable. First of all, orange is my favorite color, so I get very excited when I see carrots and butternut squash or anything orange. So here is my butternut squash. I just cut off the tip. And I don't know why, but I like to cut off the bottom too. I think it helps me with the peeling. And then I just peel it. So peel it carefully because it kind of is cumbersome. You know what I sometimes do? I sometimes break it up a little, and if you have a few pieces of peel stuck, that's okay. So here you go. I sort of just kind of go around. And here's my butternut squash, sort of clean up my station as I go along. It's such a nice thing to clean up as you go along so that when you're finished cooking, you're almost finished cleaning. It just feels nice. I have a friend, April, who taught me to clean as I go. She's a big proponent of it. And it really, and my mother also does, like our kitchen is pretty much clean by the time she's finished cooking. Okay. So I don't love this peeler. I have a better peeler, but we're going to just go with this. I'm having a little bit of a...
Don't move back.
Oh, don't move back. Okay. All right. This one is... Usually it's not this tough to peel, but we're just going to stop here now that everyone saw how to peel it. I forgot what the peeler is called. It's like, I think it's Swiss, and they're really excellent. This one doesn't work as well.
That's it. That's good. That's good.
There. Okay, that's perfect. You just sort of want the flavors to peek through. Okay. All right, so far, let's go through the ingredients, make sure we have it. My chicken, my onions, and my head of garlic. Then I have the most important parts of the soup, the layering of the soup. I have celery, I have carrots, I have another aromatic, which is anything that gives that kind of flavor, like onions and garlic and leeks. I have my butternut squash. I'm not even taking the seeds out because it will stay contained. The way I cut it, I made sure that there's a covering so the seeds don't fly all over the soup. Okay, if you want to use a sweet potato, again, I washed it, and then I'm just going to cut the tips. What I find that when I cut the tips, it's easier to peel when I can grasp the tip end of the peel. See how so this is much easier to peel. So I just peel it. And if you don't, it's organic. If you decide not to peel it, I think it's okay too, but I just like to peel it. Okay, so here's my peel. See how it doesn't have to be perfect? Okay, next. My garbage bowl is filling up happily. It loves doing its job. Okay, rutabaga. I like to add rutabaga for flavor. We talked about how delicious it is once it's already cooked. And I do the same thing. I cut the tip and the top and I peel it. And what it looks like, so remember how we talked about how every vegetable looks different, just like every person looks different, and every person is different size. You could be tall or you can be not as tall, you can be short, you can have everybody, some people wear glasses, some people have dark hair, some people have blonde hair, right? Lots of different ways we look. Well, our vegetables, Hashem created them each as an individual as well. So you'll see these are rutabagas, and this is a rutabaga. This one's peeled already, but it has a different shape. Okay, I'm piling my vegetables. Okay, here's a fun one, is the celery root. So you do the same thing with the celery root, you sort of just cut around it. I start with my knife and I sort of just cut around it, and then I peel it. So I kind of use a peeler and a knife. And here is my rutabaga, again, my celery root. So I think we use, a parsnip. Parsnip is so fun to peel. My kids love peeling parsnips. And then we just peel. See how easy it is? A parsnip looks like a white carrot. And then, there you go. Peel. Clean this up. All right, let's start building the flavors of our soup. I have added the chicken and my onions and my garlic, and now I'm gonna add my leeks. there's no special order. I like to add the onions and the garlic first, but after that, just kind of have fun putting everything in. My carrots, and could you just show us what the pot looks like as I'm layering? And I'm sort of just layering the flavors, and it's a lot of vegetables. You know what? All the vegetables come into the broth, and they add so much flavor, you wouldn't even believe it. Okay, look how happy my soup is. My chicken is joined with all its vegetable friends. Okay, now I take water. Regular water from the sink, and then you pour it in. Ready? I don't usually put it in a decanter, but I am doing it now so that it's easier than bringing it to the sink. So you pour water until it's all the way filled.
So the question is, do you cut the carrots and other veggies?
Okay, somebody asked if you cut the vegetables. You don't have to. I usually just cut the tip and that's it. If you want to, you can chunk it. I tend to like to keep it whole so that when the soup is ready, I like to take out the vegetables and then chop it to size. So that works well for me. If you want to chop the vegetables first, go ahead. So the thing with chicken soup is it cooks longer than a vegetable soup. So then the vegetables tend to get a little mushy. So not everybody likes the vegetables in their soup. That's why I don't cut it too small, because most people don't want a mushy vegetable. But if they're bigger, then it tastes better. So you really add a lot of water. So far my pot is almost filled. And by the way, for the leftover soup, what I do is I freeze it into 2 or 4 cup containers, and then I use it either for soup in the middle of the week if we want soup, or I use it for recipes. So here is how I took it out of the freezer to show you. Here's the chicken soup, and here is a 32 ounce, so here is 4 cups. And then this way, if a recipe calls for chicken stock, homemade is the best because you can control the ingredients that are inside homemade. And I just take it out, defrost it, so I have to be a little bit more prepared than just thinking at the spur of the moment. But then I have the chicken. Let me add, I like to cover the vegetables, so let's cover more vegetables. Okay. Okay, this is good. And then you could already see, because I sauteed the chicken, you could already see the fat rising to the top. And so what I do, I'm going to put it on as high as possible. Okay, turn your knob on your stovetop, turn it to high, because you want it to start boiling. Already there's a little bit of movement. So, excuse me. So you want it to start boiling, because once it boils, then you can guarantee that the flavors kind of melded together. Look how beautiful. Okay, let's top it off with a few things. Number 1, let's get our herbs. So if you have herbs in your house, if you have dill and parsley, those are 2 really good herbs to add to your soup. If you have room in your fridge, a lot of people don't have room right now in their fridges, but when I have room, this is how I like to store my herbs, as if they're flowers, because they are flowers, they are growing things. I put them into a mason jar with water, and this really keeps my herbs last very long, and then I just go into the fridge and I grab handfuls of herbs as needed. Another way to do it, which I usually do, is I take a paper towel and I'll wet the herbs just a little bit, and then I'll wrap the paper towel over the herbs and put it in a Ziploc bag. And that's usually how I store it, because it takes less space, but it keeps it moist enough that it lasts longer. Okay, but you want to know something cool? The what out of the way? This?
The bottles.
Oh, these. Let me take these out of the way. Okay. I went to the kosher market, and they I went to the kosher market and they had pre-washed and pre-checked herbs. So because there tends to be, sometimes you'll find some bugs in the herbs, so I wash them very well, but this saves me the washing because it says washed and checked and ready to use, and it even has a kosher symbol to show that somebody actually checked them to make sure there are no bugs. So this really, I liked it also, especially now that it was pre-packaged and closed, so I knew people didn't pick at it and touch it. Okay, so I have my herbs, but before I add my herbs, the most important, who can guess what the most important flavor for the soup is? To give the soup flavor. If you guessed salt, you were right. Here's the salt. I use kosher salt. I use the Diamond kosher salt. If you use any other kind of kosher salt, like Morton's kosher salt is much saltier, so I would use less. For a pot this size, I use almost 5 tablespoons. I use about 4 and a little bit tablespoons. So depending on if your pot is smaller, add less. You could always add it later, but I like my vegetables to cook with the salt. Okay, remember last week we talked about my 2 tablespoon scoop. I love it. I use it every day probably. So this way, because I get distracted easily, I won't remember how many tablespoons I put in. So here's 2 tablespoons of salt, and then another 2, so that makes 4. And then I usually add a little bit more, maybe almost 1 more. But if your pot is smaller, do not use 4 or 5 tablespoons. Use less. I don't know what this is. I think this pot is an 8-quart or a 12-quart. Not sure. But just kind of eyeball it and go from there. Okay, so that I use this, and then let's use some pepper. Fresh pepper is the best. And I count to 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now I'll do another 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pepper also gives a really nice flavor to the soup. So now I have salt and pepper, and now I'm going to add my herbs. I'm going to take a handful of herbs. I'm going to take a handful of my parsley and stick it on the top. And now I'm going to add my dill. Dill is amazing. Dill really adds so much flavor to the chicken soup. So if you don't have parsley, that's fine, but try to have dill. Try to add dill. So here's my dill, and I'm putting it in. Oh, just smells delicious. Okay, so far we have all our chicken soup ready in a pot. Now, you'll notice already you can see, I'm going to use this, that as it starts bubbling, there's some white that comes up. So when I'm in the kitchen, as my soup is cooking and boiling away, it hasn't started boiling yet, but as my chicken starts, I kind of walk over, I have my skimmer just hanging around, and I sort of just start removing any of the white that tends to lean against the sides of the pot. So you sort of can see it's starting to, the fat always rises, right? So I'm starting to see the fat. As it boils, a lot more fat will come, and then I just kind of skim it as it goes along, and it gives me a clearer broth. So that's my chicken soup. We're gonna let it do its thing. It takes about, okay, so this is what I do. I put it on high, and I wait till it boils. And I let it boil for about 5-10 minutes. And then when it gets really angry and it's really bubbling, or very positive, very excited and happy, and it starts bubbling, I'll lower the flame to about low, and I'll let it sit for a while, maybe for 45 minutes. And then once I start seeing that the vegetables have broken down and I can smell the chicken soup, then I'll turn it down to simmer and let it simmer for about an hour.
Just listen.
And then it will be perfect. So what I tend to do is, once it's done, I wait till it cools, And sometimes I'll separate the soup where I'll pour the soup through a colander to let all the soup come on the bottom, and then I'll just select the vegetables that I like, and that's how I'll warm it up. And once my soup is in the fridge, I take it out and I take off all the fat. I skim the fat, then I'll start adding the matzo ball mix to it. So let's start, let me show you how to make matzo balls. Here's my matzo ball mix. Do you want to put a pot up with water so I can show them how to boil it? Okay, so let's make our matzo balls. Firstly, I love Stripes matzo ball mix. And it's kosher for Passover, but I use it all year. I usually buy like 4 or 5 boxes, and I'm not hoarding. I just have them to last me 4 or 5 weeks. I tend to use both bags, but you can choose to use one bag and just do one recipe. So I double the recipe. My kids really like matzo balls. They actually like to eat them plain. Give me a second and I'll get the stuff. I will be right there. Okay. So I grab a bowl. And I grab my eggs. And somehow eggs became a very hot commodity lately where they're only letting you buy 2 dozen eggs at a time. Eggs last a while, so if you can find more eggs, just buy them and they'll last a while so you won't have to go out to the market again. I like the Trader Joe's eggs. I like to buy ones that they'll say vegetarian feed, no antibiotics. That's my big one. I don't really want to give my kids any extra antibiotics. So I try to find ones that say no hormones, no antibiotics. Okay, so bowl, eggs, oil. So if I use canola, I use expeller pressed or cold pressed, so they didn't use any chemicals to extract the oil from the seeds, because oil comes from seeds. And so they have to extract them, they have to pull the oil out of the seeds. And sometimes they use some sort of chemicals that aren't that healthy. So if you use canola, I like sunflower oil, any oil that doesn't taste. Don't use olive oil here. I wouldn't even use avocado oil because there's a little bit of a remnants of avocado taste. Okay, the first thing you do is add eggs. Everybody ready? I'm going to add 4 eggs. And remember I told you how I check my eggs to make sure there's no blood spots? So I don't actually like to do this usually, but we're doing it today, that I'm adding it directly into the bowl. But if one of my eggs has a blood spot, then I have to throw all the eggs out. So it's not the best idea. Okay, so I'm breaking the eggs in half, and I'm checking the eggs to make sure that there's no blood. See, I'm bringing, we talked about this by the challah baking, I'm bringing God into, and so I'm doing a double recipe.
That's what we have.
So I'm doing 4 eggs. Okay. So here are my eggs. I usually, like I said, I usually use 1 package. I have my garbage bowl, hooray. Okay, now I'm moving my eggs away. Let's see if my soup is, I'm gonna transfer this after to my stove, so that, to my oven, so that I can, okay. Now, where's my spoon? You can use a spoon or a fork. You just sort of want to break down. You don't want to whip them or even whisk them too much. You sort of just want to break down the yolks. There you go. Okay. Now I'm going to add a little oil. It calls for like 1/4 cup oil. So if it's a double recipe, it's 1/2 cup of oil. I don't use that much. I sort of just put a glug in. And then I mix it again. So I want to incorporate the oil and the eggs together. And then I add my bag of matzo balls. Okay. Garbage bowl to the rescue. See how my whole area, my workspace, is relatively clean of garbage because I am cleaning as I go. Okay, my matzo ball. So the matzo ball mix has flavoring in it. It tells you it has matzah meal, a little bit of water, that's interesting, salt, onion powder, a little bit of olive oil, garlic powder, and white pepper. They use white pepper so you don't see the black flakes. But if you only have matzah meal, it's pretty much similar. I would just add some spices. So if you just have a matzah meal, use the matzah meal, follow the recipe the same. I would just add a little bit of water or seltzer to the recipe, and maybe a little onion powder, a little bit of garlic powder, and then definitely salt and pepper. Okay, I am mixing this. See how I'm mixing this? And what you're gonna notice is it's gonna thicken because as the liquid and the matzah meal mixes, it expands the matzah meal. Okay, see? Look how nice this is. This is just perfect consistency. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna leave my matzah meal mixture to kind of sit for a little bit. I usually put plastic over it, plastic wrap, and I kind of just let it sit until it looks like this, until it has the consistency where you could literally almost keep a fork hanging tight in it. So it takes about 20 minutes. You could stick it in the fridge. Sometimes if I'm in a rush, I'll stick it in the fridge and I'll cool it first. So here is my matzah mix that my son Isaac made. And I will show you what I do. So there's two ways to do it. You can either wait for your soup to boil and then add the matzah. That's how I like to do it. My preferable way is to allow my soup to boil, and once my soup boils, I form the matzah balls, and I'll show you how I do it, and I stick it direct. Okay, let's start it. Let me explain it better. Once my soup is ready, you want to make sure the soup is ready. So once my soup is ready, it's cooked for 2 hours or so, then I'll add the matzah balls. And if I had put my soup in the fridge Thursday night, then Friday morning I'll take the soup out, I'll clear the soup up, I'll bring it to a boil, and then I'll put the matzah balls in. So what it does is it gives a lot of flavor to the matzah ball mix. And then your matzah ball has a little bit of the chicken soup flavor, and it's really delicious. And at the same time, the matzah ball mix adds flavor to the soup. So that's delicious. If you don't want to do it, or you don't have room in your soup pot, or sometimes when I'm having a lot of guests and I don't have room literally to put the matzah ball into the soup, my soup is so full, I'll just take a regular pot and I'll add water and I'll bring it to a boil and I'll add salt, and sometimes I'll even add a little bit of chicken broth to the water, and then I will make the matzah balls. Let me show you how. The first thing I do, I'll bring you over. My soup, my pot is boiled. I wash my hands so that my hands are slightly damp. There's salt in here already. And my hands are wet, so this way the matzo ball mix does not stick to my hands. And then I just drop them in. And they'll float to the top. And you can make them any size. I actually so there's two ways to do it. You can either make them really big. They're going to expand double in size. So you can either make them really big, and then when you serve the soup, you have a big matzo ball in the center, which is very pretty. Or sometimes I like to do them a little smaller so that I can put 2 matzo balls in the chicken soup bowl, and that also looks really pretty. So I made the recipe I think says 8 per package. So I made exactly 8. Wow, look at that. I didn't even count. So you see already how they're starting to expand? Once the water, so I'm letting the water come to a boil, and I'm letting it kind of find its place. And then I'm going to put the cover on, and I'm going to lower the flame, and I'm going to let it hang out and kind of lightly simmer for about a half hour, 45 minutes. I happen to like matzo balls that are a little bit raw in the center, where it's a little darker and chewier. You know, they talk about the two different types of matzo balls, the floaters and the sinkers. So the floaters are really light and fluffy, and the sinkers you need a fork and a knife for. I like a combination of both. I don't like it when it's too fluffy, and I don't like it when it's too hard, where you literally need a saw to open them. But look how beautiful. See already how they're boiled? Oh, this is music to my ears. Look how beautiful. I hear the sizzling. Okay, so now I'm going to wash my hands, and I'm going to put the cover on the matzo balls. Meanwhile, let's just take a look at the chicken soup. So this is obviously not strong enough to really support this, so I'm going to transfer it over. I'm putting this on top of here, and I'm lowering this. And I'm going to let this hang out for about a half hour. And I'm going to wait till this boils. And once this boils, I'm going to let it sit for, let's talk about that again. What are we doing? We're going to let it boil. We're going to let it boil for about 5 minutes. And then we're going to lower the flame to low, not to simmer yet, do low for about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes. And then I'm going to lower it even further. And then I generally, what I do is I take my cover and I kind of put it halfway, sort of like to contain the soup, but also to cover it. So but also to let a little bit of the condensation come out. So here's my soup, and then once it's been sitting for a while, then I'll cover it like this. Not all the way, because I sort of want to leave it like this. And that's what I do when I leave it for a while. Okay, so this Shabbos, we're home again, yay. And we are going to have delicious chicken soup and delicious matzo balls. And if you choose, grab a bag of noodles, grab a bag of egg noodles, boil them, and add them to your soup. So then you have chicken, matzo ball, noodle soup. And if it's Passover, either use kosher for Passover noodles, or you can even do egg drops. There's lots of different options to add to your soup. My kids like to use a little soup nuts that are delicious, that they sell at a lot of markets. And there you have it. Happy Erev Shabbos. Light Shabbat candles today. What time is Shabbat? 7:50. 650. Last week, we changed the world. This week, we're going to change the world. Women and girls, please light Shabbat candles. Bring Shabbat into your home. Bring Shabbat into your community. Bring Shabbat into the world. Shabbat Shalom. And thank you very much for joining.
Show the chicken soup.
And our chicken soup. Woohoo! And our matzo balls. Wow. Look, my goodness. See?